The World Cup in America has turned into something bigger than a soccer tournament, and honestly, that might be the real story right now. While fans obsess over golden boot races and bracket predictions, the tournament has become a stage for a much messier drama involving the White House, FIFA's leadership, and a fight over what this competition is even supposed to represent. Let's start with the politics, because it is impossible to talk about this World Cup without it. Back in December, at the draw ceremony held in Washington, FIFA President Gianni Infantino did something no one expected. He stood next to President Trump and handed him the very first FIFA Peace Prize, a brand new award invented seemingly out of nowhere. Infantino told the room that the world needed hope, unity, and vision, and that Trump embodied exactly that kind of leadership. The room reportedly went quiet in a strange way, somewhere between polite applause and visible discomfort. That single moment lit a fuse that has been burning ever since. A London-based human rights organization called Fair Square filed a formal complaint with FIFA's Ethics Committee just 2 days later, accusing Infantino of 4 separate violations of FIFA's own neutrality rules. Their argument was simple. FIFA officials are required to stay politically neutral when dealing with government leaders, and handing a sitting president a peace award, especially one invented for the occasion, looked like anything but neutral. The complaint pointed to earlier moments too, including Infantino publicly suggesting months before that Trump deserved the Nobel Peace Prize, plus comments made in Miami that critics say amounted to an open endorsement of the president's political agenda. Since then, the pressure has only grown. Reports suggest that inside FIFA's own offices in Zurich, there is a rising sense of embarrassment among staff who feel the organization has compromised its supposed independence. Norway's Football Federation president publicly called for the Peace Prize to be scrapped entirely and said she backs the ethics investigation into Infantino. A group of European lawmakers spanning several political parties has also weighed in, pressing FIFA to take the complaint seriously rather than quietly burying it. FIFA's official response so far has been to say it does not comment on ongoing ethics matters, while separately insisting the Peace Prize will continue as an annual tradition recognizing what it calls meaningful contributions to unity. Then there is the immigration controversy, which honestly might be even thornier than the Peace Prize saga. Since January of last year, the Trump administration has pushed an aggressive mass deportation campaign, and there have been serious concerns raised about how that campaign might collide with a tournament expecting tens of millions of international visitors. According to reporting, FIFA officials internally discussed asking President Trump directly for what would essentially be a temporary pause, sometimes described as a full moratorium, on immigration and customs enforcement operations for the entire length of the tournament, which runs across roughly 39 days. The idea was that Infantino himself might make that appeal personally. The concern is not hypothetical either. Analysis of government enforcement data found that in just over a year, agents made more than 167,000 arrests across the metropolitan areas that include the 11 host cities where World Cup matches are being played. Human rights groups have also reported that federal agents were involved in the deaths of at least 2 American citizen protesters, and that at least 19 people died while in immigration detention this year. More than 20 fan groups across the country, working alongside the American Civil Liberties Union and dozens of other organizations, issued a formal travel advisory warning visitors, especially people from immigrant communities, racial and ethnic minorities, and LGBTQ+ travelers, that they could face serious risk simply by attending matches. During a congressional hearing earlier this year, a senior immigration official confirmed that agents would be actively present in and around World Cup security operations, and did not agree to any kind of pause when directly questioned. That answer alarmed a number of senators, including one who publicly warned that heavy-handed enforcement rhetoric could scare away international fans altogether, undercutting the economic and cultural benefits the tournament was supposed to bring. FIFA, for its part, has floated the idea of a so-called ice truce, essentially asking the government to step back from enforcement specifically at stadiums, fan zones, and official tournament events, though there has been no public confirmation that Washington has agreed to anything of the sort. There is also a financial angle that has drawn scrutiny. A recent disclosure connected to the president revealed that Infantino personally gave him tickets to last year's FIFA Club World Cup, worth around $15,000, a detail that has only added fuel to accusations that the relationship between FIFA's leadership and the White House has grown uncomfortably close. Critics argue that gifts like this blur the line between a supposedly independent sports federation and a political relationship that benefits both men, with Trump getting a global spotlight and Infantino apparently gaining favor with the American administration hosting the tournament. None of this has stopped the actual soccer, though, and on the field, this tournament has delivered chaos in the best possible way. Several traditional powerhouses have already gone home earlier than anyone expected, and the round of 32 alone produced some of the wildest matches in recent World Cup memory. Let's talk about who actually stayed alive. Norway advanced to the round of 16 after a dramatic late winner from their captain sealed a 2-1 victory over Ivory Coast in Dallas. That goal, arriving in the closing minutes, sent Norwegian fans into an absolute frenzy and set up a heavyweight showdown against Brazil in the next round. France looked utterly dominant in dispatching Sweden 3-0 at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Their captain scored twice, with another forward adding a third, while a playmaking midfielder set up 2 of those goals himself. That win pushed France into a quarter-final path against Paraguay, who pulled off one of the tournament's biggest shocks by eliminating Germany on penalties after a 1-1 draw through extra time in Boston. Germany's elimination sent genuine shockwaves through European football circles, ending the tournament for one of the sport's most historically dominant national teams far earlier than almost anyone predicted. Mexico, playing as co-host, took down Ecuador 2-0 in Mexico City behind first-half goals from 2 of their forwards, confirming their spot in the knockouts in front of a deafening home crowd. That match reportedly had an hour-long weather delay before kickoff, adding extra tension to an already electric atmosphere. England survived a genuine scare against Democratic Republic of Congo in Atlanta. Congo actually took an early lead through a slick move down the left flank in just the 7th minute, stunning the English side and their traveling supporters. But their captain answered with 2 second-half goals to complete a dramatic 2-1 comeback, sending England through to face host nation Mexico in the round of 16. Belgium's run to the knockouts might be the single craziest story of the round. They fell behind Senegal by 2 goals and looked finished, only to storm back and win 3-2 in extra time, with the winning goal coming from a converted penalty in the very last moments of the match. It was the kind of comeback that instantly becomes tournament folklore. The United States men's national team also punched their ticket to the round of 16, beating Bosnia and Herzegovina 2-0 in the Bay Area, despite being reduced to 10 players for a significant chunk of the second half. Head coach Mauricio Pochettino's squad managed to hold their lead and even extend it while playing a man down. A gritty performance that has fans genuinely excited about how far this American side could go on home soil. Their reward is a round of 16 date against Belgium, the team that just completed that stunning comeback against Senegal. Meanwhile, the Netherlands were sent packing by Morocco in a penalty shootout after both sides finished level following extra time, continuing what has been a genuinely special tournament run for the Atlas Lions, who now face co-host Canada in the next round. Canada themselves made history by becoming the very first team to clinch a round of 16 spot. edging South Africa 1-0 thanks to a stoppage time strike that sent the home crowd in Los Angeles into delirium. Brazil needed a stoppage time goal of their own to get past Japan 2-1 in Houston, with their winner arriving deep into injury time off the boot of an Arsenal winger who has quietly been one of the tournament's most dangerous attacking threats. That result keeps Brazil's title hopes very much alive, heading into a mouth-watering clash with Norway. As for the final day of round of 32 action, 3 heavyweight matchups just wrapped up or are still unfolding. Spain cruised past Austria 3-0, with their forwards scoring twice to continue an impressive individual tournament. Portugal edged out Croatia 2-1 in Toronto, and this one deserves special mention because it marked the first World Cup knockout stage goal of Cristiano Ronaldo's entire career. A genuinely historic moment for one of the sport's greatest ever players, followed by a stoppage time header that sealed the win and set up a blockbuster last 16 date against Spain. Switzerland also advanced, beating Algeria 2-0 in Vancouver behind goals in each half. Later, 3 more matches are wrapping up the round entirely. Australia is taking on Egypt, with Mohamed Salah leading a Pharaohs side looking for their first ever World Cup knockout stage win, while the Socceroos hope to claim their own first knockout victory in tournament history. Argentina, still carrying the weight of expectation with Lionel Messi leading the line, faces a Cape Verde side that has become one of the most beloved stories of this entire World Cup. The tiny island nation, led by their 40-year-old goalkeeper, has remained unbeaten and become the smallest country ever to reach a World Cup knockout round. A genuinely remarkable underdog tale. And Colombia, unbeaten so far in the tournament, takes on Ghana in Kansas City as they chase just their 4th ever appearance in the round of 16. Looking at individual performances, the Golden Boot race remains tight at the top. France's captain and Argentina's captain are currently tied for the tournament lead with 6 goals apiece, showing that even in his final World Cup, the Argentine superstar still has plenty of magic left. Right behind them, Norway's star forward and England's captain sit with 5 goals each, while a forward from Senegal rounds out the top 5 with 4. Looking at team-level attacking output, France sits comfortably atop the goals scored chart with 13, followed by Germany and Netherlands tied with 11 each, despite both of those teams already being eliminated. Norway and the United States round out the top 5 with 10 goals apiece, a genuinely impressive number for the co-host nation, given the pressure of performing on home turf. As for who bookmakers and analysts believe is most likely to lift the trophy, France currently sits as the clear favorite according to third-party sports data analysis, with roughly a 31% chance of winning it all. Argentina follows at around 17%, with Spain and England essentially tied for third at roughly 10% each. Brazil sits around 7%, Portugal around 6%, and the United States, Morocco, Colombia, and Mexico are all bunched together near 3% apiece. Of course, these numbers shift with every match, and given how many upsets this tournament has already produced, nobody should treat these percentages as anything more than a rough snapshot. Stepping back from the numbers, though, what makes this World Cup genuinely unusual is how tightly the sport and the politics have become intertwined. Normally, a World Cup story is about goals, heartbreak, and Cinderella runs like Cape Verde's. This time, fans are also debating whether FIFA's leadership has compromised its independence, whether immigration enforcement will cast a shadow over international visitors, and whether a peace prize handed to a sitting president will end up defining Infantino's legacy more than any stadium deal or broadcast contract ever could. There is a broader argument here too, one that goes beyond this single tournament. FIFA has always claimed to stand above politics, presenting itself as an organization that unites the world through sport regardless of ideology or nationality. But critics increasingly argue that hosting arrangements, sponsorship deals, and personal relationships between officials and heads of state make true neutrality almost impossible in practice. Whether or not the ethics investigation into Infantino actually leads to any real consequences, the fact that it exists at all, backed by a respected human rights organization and echoed by a sitting National Federation president, suggests this debate is not going away anytime soon. For now, though, the tournament rolls on. The final round of 32 matches wrap up over these next couple of days, and once the dust settles, 16 teams will remain standing, chasing a trophy that this year, more than most, carries weight far beyond the pitch itself. Let's dig a little deeper into how this Peace Prize situation actually unfolded, because the timeline matters. Back in early October of last year, months before the draw ceremony even happened, Infantino had already posted on his personal social media account suggesting that Trump deserved that year's Nobel Peace Prize. He did not win it. Then, roughly a month later, at an event in Miami, Florida, Infantino made additional remarks about the president that critics say went well beyond diplomatic courtesy and crossed into open political endorsement. So by the time the actual Peace Prize ceremony happened in December in Washington, D.C., Fair Square argued this was not an isolated lapse in judgment, but rather a pattern stretching back weeks, maybe months. Now back to the immigration piece, because there is more nuance worth exploring. The idea of an ice truce did not come out of nowhere. It was reportedly modeled loosely on similar requests made during past major international events hosted in the United States, where organizers asked federal agencies to dial back visible enforcement near tourist-heavy areas to avoid scaring off international visitors and the spending that comes with them. FIFA's calculation seems to be economic as much as ethical. Tens of millions of visitors were projected to travel to the 11 host cities across the tournament's roughly 6-week window, and any perception that international guests might face detention, questioning, or worse could meaningfully dent both attendance and the broader hospitality economy tied to the event. But the response from the administration has been lukewarm at best. When directly pressed during that congressional hearing, the senior immigration official did not rule out enforcement near stadiums, and instead framed agency involvement as a core part of the overall security architecture, protecting fans and players alike. That framing frustrated advocacy groups who argue there is a meaningful difference between general security cooperation and active immigration enforcement targeting attendees, especially in cities with large immigrant populations like Los Angeles, Houston, and Miami. The fan-led travel advisory adds another layer to this story worth sitting with for a moment. Groups with genuinely colorful names, from supporter clubs built around specific American cities to smaller regional fan collectives, banded together with major civil liberties organizations to warn incoming visitors in plain language. Their advisory did not mince words, describing what it called rising authoritarianism and increasing risk of violence, particularly for immigrant communities, racial and ethnic minorities, and LGBTQ plus travelers. That kind of language appearing in an official fan advisory tied to a global sporting event is almost unheard of in modern World Cup history, and underscores just how unusual this tournament's political backdrop has become. Human rights organizations have gone further still, publishing detailed data analysis covering roughly the 14 months leading into the tournament. Their findings, drawn from official government enforcement statistics, describe a sharp increase in arrests specifically within the metro areas surrounding host stadiums. Beyond the raw arrest numbers, these reports also documented fatal incidents connected to federal agents during protests, along with a troubling number of deaths inside immigration detention facilities during the same period. Advocacy groups argue these numbers should factor directly into how FIFA approaches its stated commitment to what Infantino has repeatedly called making this tournament, in his words, a World Cup for everyone. That phrase, a World Cup for everyone, has actually become something of a lightning rod itself. Critics, including immigrant soccer fans writing personal essays about their own hesitation to attend matches, argue the slogan rings hollow given the broader immigration climate surrounding the tournament. For a sport that has always prided itself on being a unifying global language, understood equally in dozens of countries and hundreds of languages, the disconnect between that branding and the lived reality facing some potential visitors has struck a nerve well beyond typical football commentary circles. Speaking of underdogs, it is hard to overstate just how remarkable Cape Verde's journey has been so far. This is a nation of roughly 500,000 people, an archipelago off the West African coast, fielding a squad built largely from players with connections to European clubs through the diaspora. Their goalkeeper at 40 years old has become something of a folk hero, marshalling a defense that has somehow kept the tiny nation unbeaten deep into the knockout rounds. Whatever happens against Argentina, Cape Verde has already secured a permanent place in World Cup history simply by becoming the smallest nation ever to reach this stage of the tournament. On the flip side, Germany's exit at the hands of Paraguay will likely trigger serious soul-searching back home. This marks yet another disappointing tournament for a program that has historically been considered among the sport's most consistent powerhouses, and pundits are already drawing comparisons to previous early exits that led to major structural changes within the German Football Federation. Whether this result prompts similar introspection remains to be seen, but the shock inside German football circles was immediate and visible. As the round of 16 approaches, the bracket is shaping up to deliver several genuinely mouth-watering matchups. Brazil versus Norway pits one of the tournament's most star-studded attacking lineups against a Norwegian side built around one of the most lethal individual scorers in the competition. Portugal versus Spain brings together two European heavyweights with wildly different generational storylines, one built around an aging legend chasing a final crowning achievement, the other built around a deep, balanced squad many analysts consider the most complete team left in the field. Mexico versus England will be an enormous occasion for the co-host nation, played in front of what is expected to be an overwhelmingly pro-Mexico crowd, adding an extra layer of pressure onto England's already talented but occasionally inconsistent group. And then there is the United States and Belgium, a matchup that carries its own unique weight given the American side's ongoing quest to prove they belong among the sport's elite on home soil. Pochettino has repeatedly said in press conferences that reaching the quarterfinals would represent a genuine milestone for American soccer, given the program's history of falling short at this exact stage in previous tournaments. Belgium, for their part, will enter that match riding the emotional high of their stunning comeback against Senegal, though questions remain about whether that dramatic extra-time victory left key players physically or emotionally drained heading into the next round. Whatever happens across these next few rounds, one thing already feels certain. This World Cup will be remembered as much for its off-field storylines as for anything that happens between the lines on the pitch. And depending on how the ethics investigation into Infantino ultimately resolves, this tournament could end up reshaping how future FIFA leadership approaches its relationships with sitting heads of state for years to come.